Hello guys, Problematic Boy here with something a little different, still in the same genre. We're going to be talking about Last Epoch today. As I did play 2 months of Path of Exile Sentinel and made some content with that. We've taken a little break, been playing some Last Epoch, playing some FF14 online, but I'm not going to make videos about FF14. We are going to make a video about Last Epoch because it was my first time playing Last Epoch, and I wanted to give a little short summation of my thoughts and also give a very special double barrel blast, two primalist builds that I want to talk about that I've enjoyed quite a bit. So, first off, my thoughts on Last Epoch is that it's really hooked me. It's a very good game. It sort of has some interesting design decisions, and I don't want to compare it to Path of Exile at all, but I do want to talk about it. First off, the main focus of Last Epoch that I think is having a very high amount of build variety. So there's obviously builds in this game that work off of one or two uniques, or maybe even more, that become available once you find them. At this point, the game is mostly SSF. There's no trading, but without any uniques, I'm pretty sure that at least every single one of the masteries, each class has, well, it's supposed to have three. Right now, there's three classes that only have, I believe it's three classes. Yep, that only have two. But but they each have, are going to have three masteries eventually, and probably at the moment within each of those masteries, there's a build you can play without needing to rely on a unique that can get you to endgame, get you through the campaign, and get you farming at a certain level. And I think that's really great, and I think that's really important. It almost might be too much because I find myself being a little overwhelmed sometimes. But overall, I think that's the biggest strength of Last Epoch right now. And the gearing, the crafting, I really like the crafting, and I think it's an enjoyable system. It might be a little too good. I mean, I think sometimes it feels like an item editor when you go into the Forge screen in this game. If you've never played it before, or you don't know anything about Last Epoch, which is fine, I'm sort of gearing this video towards new players like me, is you go in here and you have you can have the four affixes. That's pretty normal. You have two prefixes, two suffixes. You hold Alt on an item. It tells you all of these things. I think the strongest part of the crafting so far and the itemization so far is that the base items in this game are very interesting. The helmets and the body armors are class specific for all the classes. So you can get very interesting affixes on those class specific things that relate to some build or some. It's not really relating to a build, it's more like relating to a synergy that can make a build if you stack enough of it, or if you have a specific mod, right? It can help build or help enable something. And that's just on rare pieces, right? That's like not needing a legendary, that's just like finding it on a rare piece. And then you can shatter things to get shards or find shards out in the game. You can even shatter the rare stuff. And essentially, after you've shattered it, if it's available to be put on that item, you can use either a Glyph of Hope or not a Glyph at all. Hold on, let me clear this. And you can say, okay, I want to upgrade the affix. So it might be tier 1 right now. Maybe I want it to be tier 2. I have tons of spell critical chance shards, and I don't want to use a Glyph of Hope because those are kind of... Basically what a Glyph of Hope does is it just gives a chance to not use any forging potential. And forging potential is basically how they try to limit the system in that... It's how much you can craft the item and use these crafting methods, and there's a chance for it to drop every time, and Glyphs of Hope reduce that chance, which means you can spam more. Glyphs of Hope, very powerful, you're always running out, but I can just upgrade the affix, and now it's tier 2! You can see here the crafting outcome, which you can't see because my camera's in the way, but it tells you what it increased and how much forging potential was lost. After hitting that button, and you can spam this all the way up to the maximum tier, which is tier 5. Now, the other interesting part about itemization, of course, you have these purple items, which have a random T6 affix on them that is sort of like locked in, like not necessarily like a fractured item, but you can't upgrade it anymore or change it because it's T6. And then the second most used thing that I use is Glyphs of Chaos, which basically re-rolls and upgrades an affix. So it re-rolls it into something random, and also ups its tier by 1. So it's very powerful, right? Even if it was that it's powerful, but additionally, with the crafting system, you have a random chance that another affix upgrades its tier if you're messing around with something else. It could be doing anything. It could be using an annulment orb, which is right here, a rune of removal. Can remove something you don't like. Or if you're using you're upgrading a random affix, you can upgrade another one. It's very strong. In the worst case, it feels like an item editor. In the best case, it's only an item editor when you get really lucky. Okay, so you need to get lucky. You get lucky a fair amount, but I think it's a little too strong when you're getting lucky. Maybe you need to get lucky a little bit less, and that's probably fine then. But I really do love the crafting. It definitely gives you a lot of control, and there is a degree of randomness. You know, when you're playing those Glyphs of Chaos, you want to upgrade them to the right affix, right? So, and there's a lot of affixes to choose from, so you might not get it. So I said what I really like is the base items, even the reins, the boots, the gloves. Every item slot that you're looking at here has so much variety in what the base items do for certain builds. I don't want to go into it too much before I start talking about sort of the build design philosophy here. And there's a lot of variety in playstyle, and there's a lot of variety in damage type, whether it's spellcasting, melee, but builds fall into 2 categories. For those not familiar with Last Epoch, I want to go over those 2 categories before I quickly, this video is already 6 minutes long, before I go into showing off quickly the 2 builds. They're not guides. I do not have loot filters for these. It's actually very easy. One of the great things about this game is you can make your own loot filter in the game. And as soon as you play around with the system, you realize, okay, what's the best way to make a loot filter? In my opinion, I haven't looked up any loot filter guides. It's show all unique set exalted. The exalted items are the ones with T6 affixes because you want to see them. And then hide all items. Okay, and it's ordered. So you're showing all of those, and then everything else you're hiding, and then you have specific things that you want to show for your character, or if you maybe know a little bit more about the game, you're farming for something else, you can very easily edit it and add in another rule. So here I have recolor this with all items with these affixes, and you can go in and you can choose the actual affixes. There's no IDing in this game. So items drop identified, so you can target the affixes that you want. Now, I don't know how this is going to work when trading comes out. Obviously, the filters are going to change a lot. But for right now, where it's SSF, you're either, adjusting it, so maybe I want to farm for another build, so I throw some of those items in here. But most of the time when I'm playing, I'm just looking at, very specific things that I want. And you can choose how many you want on the item, and very good. So let's get into the builds and talk about what types of 2 builds. The first type of build in this game is the hit build. And hit builds in Last Epoch almost entirely scale off of crit. So it's not like Path of Exile. I'm not trying to compare it, but other ARPGs have builds that are hit-based but do not rely on crit. Maybe at the top end they do, but you can play most of the game with them not being crit. This game, you're trying to get as much crit kind of fairly early on, even while you're doing the campaign, for hit builds, because it's such a great way to scale them. Critical strike chance and critical strike multiplier are just the way to go for hit builds, and this is the hit build. So let's go into an echo, which is sort of like a map. So that is that we'll try to do a quick one just to show off gameplay. I might not even finish the echo, but this is a spell build that is using a spell version of Earthquake. Every skill has its own tree that you can specialize. This one makes Earthquake, which is a physical attack, into a physical and lightning base attack, or spell. So it turns into a physical lightning spell. And then we have all other things to support that. This is giving global physical damage. This can trigger a physical spell or a lightning spell. Shaman, which is the mastery we're playing, gets a lot of bonuses just for having a totem up. So we're getting a lot of buffs from our totem and totem uptime, and our totem is debuffing enemies. And then we have Avalanche, which we've turned into a physical spell with a cooldown. So I'll just run through a little bit here just so you can see gameplay. Very fun build because the Earthquake is such a massive, massive button. And then you're kind of just running around, trying to keep your totem up because it makes us fast. And then we're just blasting them. I'll do an avalanche there. You see the rock boulders coming down. And we also get little rock boulders when we Earthquake because of specialization in our Earthquake tree. So like I said, this is a hit build. It's spell damage. And you're just running around and critting. It's been one of my favorite builds so far. I think there's a guy out for it that's like a real person did this. I think it's Last Epoch builds that did this. Or Epoch builds. Not Last Epoch builds, Epoch builds. But I sort of put my own spin on it. I don't know if he's doing exactly this version or not. I didn't look into this guy that much. So that is this build. We've gone to like 11 minutes. I want to show off a damage over time build just to show what kinds of things are possible in the game. It's a new build that I'm playing that's also a Primalist, but it's a different master. It's a Beastmaster. So let us go to the Beastmaster. Where are you? And this is a bleed build. So I want to talk a little bit about damage over time. Damage over time is interesting to me in this game. A lot of it feels a little bit of the same. Like like the ailments, especially, are not diverse enough. But I don't think it's that big of a problem. Because the damage that they're doing is different type, so you can scale it a different way. But if we look at damage over time, another great thing about this game has a guide, and we just look up bleed. We can see that bleed is physical damage over time. Now, like a lot of the other ailments, or all the other ailments as far as I know, it has a default base damage that isn't affected by the hit at all, and it cannot crit. So here we see that bleed is 53 base physical damage over a 4-second duration. And it stacks, I guess, theoretically indefinitely, but it's limited by the duration. So what this build does is we get one juicing minion, right, which is the Raptor. And I didn't look up anything for this. Maybe this is a real build. It's using one legendary, one unique item. Well, it's not legendary yet. You can make them legendary. I'm not going to go into that. But it's a unique item that gives minions a chance to bleed and gives them bleed duration. Very good. And then all the other stuff is rare, trying to scale it. Melee attack speed, bleed on hit, minion damage, crit avoidance, which is super important so that you don't get crit. Strength is good, physical damage is good. And then we have minion chance to bleed. Minion health is good as well, and resistances and things like that. Let me show a little bit of this build to show how just different it is, and kind of incredible that you can even have like a hybrid like minion melee build where you're meleeing and your damage. The Raptor is doing more damage than me, so you could say it's a minion focused build. But I'm still applying and scaling that base damage of the bleed on my main character's attacks. So it's not like my main character is doing 0 damage. As you can see, nothing was hitting there, and I was destroying. Or my Raptor wasn't hitting there, but I was still doing good damage. And we're just running through. We're very tanky on this build. That's one thing about the Beastmaster. I feel like I'm kind of a Primalist main at this point. I've only played the game for 10 days. I should reiterate that. And this is probably one of my favorite builds. I'm going to be playing this build today on stream. I've been switching a lot on stream, though, so I might try something else. The Temporal Sanctum Key. See, this build is very smooth. We have a ton of leech. Get that later. We have a ton of leech. Our Raptor does a ton of damage. We're still only level 60, so we have a lot of room to grow on this character. And that's one part of character progression that feels good in Last Epoch, is that a lot of times you have a character at 60 and you're just starting to get some good pieces of gear, and you realize, wow, all my passive points that I'm getting from 60 to 80 or 60 to 90, or if you're taking it to 100, are very impactful passive points that you're putting in. So I think that's a really great thing to have in the game. And the mastery trees are very Grim Dawn-esque. Like I'll pop one up here. You put points in here, and then you get access to more higher tiers, and you unlock skills as you go. So very Grim Dawn-esque. I'm not going to go over specific things. Just that we have two very different builds here. This one's damage over time. The other one was crit. You can see how we're stacking the bleed under the enemy's health bar, and also applying some other debuffs. Overall, Last Epoch has been very fun. I would definitely recommend it if you like ARPGs and you like build variety, which, a lot of the reason I play PoE is build variety. It's like trying out different stuff. Even though I played Arch Nemesis and Sentinel, I played Sentinel 2 months. I played Arch Nemesis for about a month. Even with that, with the balance patch being the same, I still was playing different stuff in each of those expansions. So we actually completed that Echo. So if anyone wants to know more, if you want me to go into more detail about either of these builds, just let me know in the comments. I'm down to making a more in-depth, actual. I don't want to call it an actual guide because I don't really make guides, but take my loot filter and say use it at your own risk. Put it there. Take my character as it is and show off the gear as it is, and then talk a little bit about the build philosophy, what the build's doing, go over the passive points. I'm willing to do that if there's an interest in it. Other than that, we are waiting for what great balance changes are going to be in Path of Exile. I'm very excited. And thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.